Hello there and welcome back to War Thunder. For you, I have today a tank review about the Chinook, which is a Japanese rank 2 battle rating 3.3 medium tank. And there are various different reasons why I want to show this tank in particular. But before I talk about this, I want to apologize for the potential background noise. There is a ventilator in my room which I need to keep running because the humidity, the heat, it's just too much if I would stop it, and I just would not be able to concentrate me enough on making the video. So the Chinook battle rating 3.3. Well, 3.3 for tanks in realistic battles is the same as 3.7 for aircraft in RRB. It's a good introduction into the tech tree. So if we talk about the British, they get their first Spitfire with cannons, the Japanese get their first Zero, you name it. So 3.7 for aircraft. For tanks, 3.3. Well, what do we have here? We have for the Americans, of course, the Sherman, same with the French. We also have here the Panzer IV F2, one of the most powerful when it comes to firepower, again at 3.3, and it's also the first real combat Panzer IV F2 where the basic shell punches right through. Same goes for the Sherman, same goes for the two T-34s, the prototype, and the T-34 1940, which are practically identical. They're the first T-34s that you get your hands on, and the Cromwell is also at 3.3, and there is even for the Italians the P-40 Leoncello, which still differs kind of a little bit. It fits a different meta, I guess. And for the French, well, at least we have the AMX 13 FL11, which plays again a bit more like a medium tank and not like a light tank. But when it comes down to then the Chinook, we also have a competitor in the premium line, which is the Chinook 2 at just battle rating 3.7, and look at the difference of the gun. Wow, that is a gun that is just so much bigger and so much longer and has so much more penetration and firepower with it, compared to the tank just being 0.4 battle rating lower. And the firepower is one of many weaknesses of the Chinook, which I want to cover. It's the survivability, the speed, mobility, firepower, turret rotation speed, gun handling overall, and it's not very enjoyable. And I think that's enough rambling. In short, it's like a diet Panzer IV F2. Sorry about this, but this is what the tank really feels like. So I kind of didn't have the best times in the battles with this tank. I would much rather prefer the Sherman when it comes to the gun handling and the rate of fire and the 50 cal and the AP shot that I can, switch between the raw penetration power of the German Panzer IV F2, the mobility and armor protection of the T-34 1940, the Leoncello for some shits and giggles, and the Cromwell, well, for its special playstyle. Same goes for the MX 13 FL11. So this tank sits kind of in a hard spot, and I think now let's begin with the review. Let's begin with the armor. And there it begins. This is a huge profile tank. It's tall, it's a good, hitting zone, and the maximum armor that we have is 50 millimeters, rather flat. Lower glacis, if you will, upper glacis, turret front. We have here a little bit of overlay that creates 100 millimeters, and that's the only reason that sometimes I survive some shots, because people automatically aim at the turret front and hit here and cannot penetrate in their Shermans with the APHE round, and also the Russians with their gun. And that's the only part where something cannot penetrate sometimes. Then we also have this glacis, but this gets, I guess, overmatched, or rather still low penned by Russian APHE BC rounds. At least I observed it multiple times in the kill cam. And we also have a big cupola with still just 50 millimeters. You're a very tall tank. Very often you do not realize that this is vulnerable. So for APHE shots, this is quite a target. And the same goes for the side. Look at the size of this tank. Just 25 millimeters, 20 millimeters, 25 millimeters, 20 on the rear, and the top 12 millimeters, so I'm not bothering to even tell you about cannons, but even 50 cals. 50 cals are an absolute nightmare. Not just will they kill their crew when they hit the turret, but they also will blacken the gun breech, they will set your engine on fire and make it black, and they also pull your tracks with a single quick burst. I've seen this, I felt this numerous times, and I don't have a 50 cal to shoot back. I don't have the turret rotation to try to snap them out of the sky. And I also don't have the rate of fire, and also not the mobility to swing the tank around in its entirety. And the X-ray reveals that we have the transmission in the front. That sometimes also saves you. So if somebody shoots here, so the killing zone is here and here. It's still a big target in my opinion, and 5 crew members. But out of the front positioned crew members, the machine gunner sits so far back that his head is practically positioned in the turret. So an armor-piercing high explosive shell penetrating the tank will also easily shred this guy and maybe even the driver. And as you can see, there is a lot of ammunition in the background, in the back of the turret, but you cannot really take out all of it without having a proper amount of ammunition for a good battle. So if everything runs perfect, big engine in the back with the fuel tanks, and yeah, as you can see, you have practically no coaxial machine gun. So you have one here, but it has a low magazine, a low capacity magazine. That one has restricted firing angles, and when the first guy dies, he is even less worth in terms of positioning than the commander. So he would even replace the commander, as far as I know, and then your machine gun is gone, at least that one, and that one keep firing. So not very promising, is it? Well, not everything is bad. Let's have a look at some other statistics. So there you can see for a medium tank, the statistics are a little bit on the more nightmarish side, if I may say so myself. And we have just the weakest engine. Even the MX-13 FL11 has a stronger engine. The weight might be not the worst, but the horsepower to ton ratio in this comparison is. And while the M4A1, the Panzer IV F2 and the Panzer IIIM might seem like they are close, they just have better gun handling. They have either a higher rate of fire or more penetration or a 50 cal or more armor or everything, and they just don't feel that sluggish. They have better maneuverability. They just can do more. And at every pipe that you hit, may it be on an abandoned factory or every concrete wall that you want to breach through, or every pile of, well, rubble or any kind of steel fragment that you hit, for example on Stalingrad, you just have this weird driving experience. The tank loses all its energy and it takes so long to get back. And I'm talking here about a fully upgraded tank with the best crew that you can imagine. An expert crew, not an ace crew though, and it's just horrible. It's on the real weaker side. The top speed, you actually can achieve it in a straight line. It's more like an American muscle car, not that bad in a straight line, and you feel that it has some engine power and is not the heaviest tank in this comparison. But effectively at turning around corners and then pointing the gun on target, well, that's just a big issue. It also has no neutral steering, and the reverse speed is also not the best. The tracks very often seem to have no traction and also just spin in the air without giving you any movement, and that's just so exhausting to drive. So this is an aspect that I absolutely don't like. So other tanks are outright faster actually on the battlefield, or they can work around it and or have other assets with it. So far the mobility is not convincing, the armor is neither, but it's not the worst that you can imagine. Then we have the firepower, and as we can see, we have here the Type 3 75mm gun. The caliber is kind of average, just the Panzer IIIM is here well, undergunned in terms of caliber, but it has a higher rate of fire, and in fact the rate of fire, the reload time, it feels really long. While the M24 Chaffee has 6.5 seconds and the T-34 1940 has here 7.1, and the MX-13 FF11 has also 7.5. Again, they can work around that. They have backup in terms of mobility or other assets. It feels really, really punishing, and it also doesn't have the penetration, as I just want to show in a moment. The ammunition count is still good enough, but it's the turret rotation speed. Look at this. This is really a slap in the face, with between 35 and up to 130% higher turret rotation speed for the medium tanks. And it's not really a contest against the MX-13 FF11, isn't. The gun depression and elevation is not really the bad thing, as is the elevation speed. They're kind of average, or at the better end of average, but it's really the combination of turret rotation speed and reload rate that makes this tank so punishing, and why is kind of explained when we talk about the ammunition. Let's begin with the first ammunition type. It's the Type 1 APHE. It's your stock round, 668 meters per second muzzle velocity. That's actually perfectly fine at this battle rating. 68 grams of TNT equivalent filler. That's also good enough. Fuse sensitivity is also not all that bad, together with the fuse delay. But it's the penetration that does not really feel sufficient. It doesn't really work very well against angled armor, and KB1 is an absolute nightmare. As long as you don't have the very flat armor, you will not penetrate, and even a Sherman or a T-34 might give you some problems, and sometimes you create those non-penetrations that you didn't expect, and with the lack of turret rotation speed and mobility, maneuverability, and also the reload, you kind of feel it rather awkward if you're used to other tanks at that battle rating to get the gun on target again and actually not get shot in the first place, again the armor being the issue. So this shell isn't all that good. The second stock shell is the Type 94 HE shell, and 11 millimeters of penetration is very often sadly not sufficient. It might be enough against a potato truck, but again, gun handling, reload speed, and getting the chance to fire at him with 1 or 2 shots even is very often not the case. And this is actually where now we get into problems, because as a tier 4 upgrade you just get the Type 90 smoke shell. So now we can put it all into the bigger picture. While your APHE shell in direct comparison isn't actually all that bad, compare it to the M4A1 and also the Panzer IIIM, they are equal or even worse in terms of raw penetration, but they have both higher rate of fire and also both can reload other ammunition types and have some backup, because the Panzer IIIM has the armor and also better mobility. Same goes for the M4A1, and also a 50 caliber to blind the enemy, and also a stabilizer. The Panzer IV F2 just rules you with the fantastic German gun, the long 75mm for the Panzer IVs, while the T-34 1940 has a much worse APHE shell than you. He also can fire a solid shot and has the armor and mobility advantage, as do the Cromwell and the MX-13 FL11. So you have no heat like the Panzer IV F2 to hull break enemy lightly armored AAA or light tanks even. You have no 50 caliber, you have a slow turret rotation speed, your ammunition is not the world's greatest, your diversity is not the best, so it's very situational what you can do. Also your armor isn't the best and your mobility neither. So all this together makes the tank not worthy 3.3. But so few people actually are interested in the Japanese tech tree that this is not a big concern for many. But from a balancing perspective, this tank has not a lot of things going for it. So now I can just show you what also happens if you are persistent under the best possible circumstances. I had here this great battle over Berlin, and so I tried to hit this plane here with the machine guns, and you can see the machine gun handling is not the very best. I make no significant hit. I mean, I hit him, which is good in the first place, but eventually he takes him out himself without my doing, and That secures me another kill. So professional times 5. And I think with that we actually can hop into the results for the very first time in just a moment, because the game is about to end. So for 6 kills and 1 plane we got, well, not an unsubstantial 43,000 civil lines and 3,700 research points. Not a bad result. Not a bad result. Maybe we can do just a little bit better. Well, here we are on Abandoned Factory, and there is just EA capture zone, so like half of the map is irrelevant. And I decide to try something that usually doesn't work, but when it works quite well. And this is rushing through the middle, flanking the enemy through the center of the map, aka frontline camping. I have no intention of spawn camping, so with the recent videos that I did, some people might still confuse this, but this is getting myself into a very early on advantageous position where I have the easy shots into the side of the enemy without them hopefully noticing me, and I can just farm them one by one with them having a damn hard time to get a counter position on me. So here there is this factory building, and quite early on we could intercept the enemy. So now we have to be patient. Now I have to say this, I could do this with a lot, and I mean a lot of other tanks as well. You could see the mobility over the concrete underground was actually not that bad. Well, that was a bit disappointing, was it? But with the third shell we finally get him. And now I hear already the tanks going around. The Sherman, good shot into his rear, and we take out the crew after he got previously hit by this M4A3. And what is that? No, M4A5, sorry about this. That was a Puma, and we just hit him behind the bush, and that's a triple strike. But you can see none of the assets of the tank really have been used. The mobility just early on, later on it was just camping. The rate of fire, not really that important. The penetration for side shots, also not that important. Machine gun, armor, everything irrelevant. So I had a very good ambush position, and this is how to play the tank. Hello sunshine, another happy customer. So yeah, this is how to make the tank work. Good situational awareness. But honestly, I could have, throughout the battles that I played, have much more success if I would have been in a Sherman, in a Panzer IV F2, hell, even a T-34, and all those other 3.3 tanks. Because of the turret rotation speed, the rate of fire, and the armor and the mobility, all not really working together. Don't get me wrong, it's not a terrible tank, but compared to the competition, it lags a bit. So again, there I see a BT5, and watch how long it takes me to turn around, where I see the enemy tank coming and he just didn't see me. I take it. Good kill. 5 kills. So I gave my team now a huge advantage, so that they can go into A with some force. We get also a bit of a support from our spawn, and I was very lucky that this guy apparently fired HE rounds. Yeah, I'm not an aircraft, my armor is still a bit thicker than this. So I heard here another tank shooting, and that's a 75mm gun sound, isn't it? So I look here around the corner with the camera controls, and he gives me my 7th kill. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. So now we have again won the match, and I just farmed the kills where I know that they're coming from. It was my experience, it was my situational awareness, and everything that I learned in hundreds and thousands of battles in both arcade and realistic. By itself, the tank is not very good. It's more like a 3.0, to be honest. And now we have a pretty strange phase where we have not a lot of stuff to do. Now the spawn pressuring, spawn camping begins, and the last enemy is somewhere else. So I cut out here 2 minutes of gameplay where there was just nothing left, and we really looked for the few remaining players. And there is some aircraft flying around in the sky, and there I just saw it. Did you see him as well? And I thought this is another tank that it actually turned out it to be. And again we have the jump on a T-34. We aim for the back of the turret and we get our 8th kill. And that's the best result so far that I got. And after that, you know, I spare you the rest because it's not really that nice to watch. So looking at the results for our 8 kills and nothing but 8 kills, we got 36,000 silver lines, 2,386 research points, a new winter camouflage. So you see, getting a few kill assists and maybe take a shot or two, and also capping games, capping capture zones, that actually gives you more silver lines and research points instead of getting the double aces and triple aces. But you know, standing in the capture point is not a lot of action. So that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this rather short tank review with just under 22 minutes. I hope you give it a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.